All right, and we're live. This is Heavy Art Talk, I think episode 5. I have Tyler, also known as the Creep from 6 Feet Deep, here with me. To say I'm excited is an understatement. Basically, Lucas at Chuggeth Kinetics tipped me off to the Creep's artwork, and I basically went through the beginning all the way to the end on his Instagram page. Then I hunted down his tattoo page and did the exact same thing. This guy's skill level is on a whole nother level. And trust me, I'm not going to try to do too much flattery, but I am absolutely amazed with your technique, your subject matter, your storytelling. I am in awe of your artwork, and I'm just so pumped to have you here. Just a quick kind of about, he's worked recently with quite a bit of bands. I'm just going to name a couple. So Mortuous, death metal band we all love. I actually did a commission for Night Shift Merch, which is a Florida merch distro that does really good work. I order from them all the time. He did the current Black Dahlia murder poster. We're going to highlight that a little bit at the end. Crystal Spiders, he did 2 album covers for them. Vacuous Depths, Duskwalker, Seep, Stuck Lucky, and Infamous Glory as well. So, yeah, with just that kind of out of the way, man, how's your day been so far?
Man, not too bad. Yeah, woke up and started the day pretty early with some art. I got a commission for a movie called Demons from the 80s. I'm working with Paul Bear Press on that one. So, yeah, we've been chipping away at that shirt design. So, getting pretty close to having it finished. But, yeah, that's what I started the morning with. Like usual, I'll wake up and almost go straight to art after breakfast. So, did a little bit of exercise and now an interview. So, yeah.
Sweet, man. Sounds like you got some good habits. As far as that movie, is it like a reissue that they're doing since it came out in the 80s?
So what they do is they typically have a collection of movies. Most of the time they kind of center around that like 70s, 80s era of like horror films. And every now and then they'll do releases just for shirts based on the movies and stuff like that. So that was one that I had talked with them about doing, and so we've been working on that little front and back design for them. So just about finished with it. So that's what I woke up and started working on this morning.
Awesome. What's your morning schedule usually look like? Like what time are you waking up?
Well, so I'm a married man with a daughter as well. So mornings are early around here. We'll usually get up about 5:30. Say bye to everybody, take the daughter to school. So usually, I'll get up, get everybody ready, and then start working. Usually around like 6 o'clock, 6:30, something like that. I'll start drawing, and then just draw until I need to go do school drop off, and then I'll come back and draw some more before I hit the tattoo shop. So, and then as soon as I get back home, it's dinner and saying hey to the family and more drawing. So
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Are you tattooing like 4 to 5 a week, or are you trying to scale back with more of these commissions and stuff you're working on with Creep?
Well, so for most of my career, it's been about 5 days a week. And then as of the last, I would say maybe the last year, I've scaled it back to about 4 days a week now, just so I could squeeze in more commission stuff. Because that's something that's, I don't know if too many people know it or not. The Creep page is only about 2 years old right now. I think I'm coming up on 2 years of having that open. It's a pretty new venture for me. That's why my band list is pretty short at the moment and other things like that. I mean, I'm super happy with what I've managed to collect so far in 2 years, but it's actually a pretty thing for me. So now that it's starting to take off in a really good direction, I scaled back work on tattoos a little bit more just to make room for it. That way they didn't seem to be, just like mashed in wherever I could fit them. I wanted it to feel a little bit more like I was allowing time for both things I love to do. So it's tattoos have been scaled back just slightly just to make room for some more commission work.
Yeah. And you've been tattooing about 12 years now?
Almost 13. So we're on year 12 right now up until I think fall this year will be 13. So
yeah, that's awesome. So you did send me your tattoo page, and I mentioned I did go all the way at the beginning, and I just want to say, like, you were always good from the beginning, but your level of improvement over time is really astounding. And like, I think that's something that a lot of artists maybe sometimes are like not super secure about, like the fact that they've improved and they kind of like hide their past work. But
yeah,
just like, I'm not trying to, it's kind of a loaded question, but like, what type of things were you focused on just in these last 12 years to keep learning and keep improving? Like, what's that mindset kind of look like?
Yeah. No, so yeah, I started out tattooing, pretty young, not quite after high school, but around I started when I was 20. So the reason for getting into tattooing, I actually tried to do graphic design before that. In high school, I was really into the idea of doing what I'm doing now with the Creep page, but growing up in a small town and, the that reach and scope of everything, it just felt like a little unattainable at the time. I didn't know how to get into it or who to reach out to ask for advice or anything like that. Like all I had was MySpace at the time. So yeah, I tried graphic design for a little bit. It wasn't really clicking. So yeah, I just happened to get lucky and fall into tattoos. I started getting tattooed by a guy in the city that I live in now. And we just sort of clicked, became friends, and then he asked me one day if I was interested in learning how to tattoo, and I think because I never had much of a fallback plan, when I got into tattooing, I was like, I really need to make this work. Like,
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted some sort of solid art career, like being creative, being able to just kind of wake up and, be myself and not have to, hide or change anything for, whatever boss at whatever job, I had. Like, I just wanted to be me, express myself, be creative. Like that was the dream. So, yeah, I mean, I think that was always kind of the driving force behind it, was just to make sure that I didn't fail, to always stay hungry, always feel like, learning and getting better above anything else. I didn't want to, to say that I didn't want to build a big following or something, isn't true. Like, sure, everybody, loves the idea of having a huge client base and, more than enough people to keep you busy and loving your work. But yeah, I mean, I think at the heart of it, I just really wanted to succeed at something, that I love to do. So, yeah, I quickly fell in love with tattooing, almost put everything else, behind me. And yeah, just really focused hard on that. And then, of course, getting married and having a family, that kind of gives you extra things to really work hard for, and that kind of added another level to it. Like I have a daughter now who's 9, so she's seen me through most of my tattoo career kind of grow from where I was to, to now. And yeah, I just always wanted to make sure that I gave her a good, a good role model to look up to, because she's really artistic as well. It's like loves drawing. Like we click on that super well. Yeah, she always sits and likes to draw with me, or comes and shows me whatever she's working on too. So yeah, I just, that was another part of it, just being a good positive role model for her, and, maybe making it look like, oh, I can do art and be successful. It doesn't have to be a career where people are like questioning whether you're going to be able to survive off of it or not, So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what keeps me going every day.
Yeah. I just think it's so interesting that some people, they could do the amount of time in terms of work that you would do. Like, okay, so let's say they tattoo or they draw 5-7 days a week, right?
Yeah.
But it's also like quality practice too. Like,
Yeah.
I was looking back and you were doing some like anatomy studies, and like I imagine there's a lot of tattooers who would ignore that side of the academic learning.
Sure. Yeah. And that stuff, it was kind of maybe not super brief, but in terms of like tattooing as a whole, I got into it for a few years. But yeah, I mean, that stuff really did like help in ways that maybe people wouldn't consider so much. Like I mean, I feel like anytime I do something when it comes to like a tattoo of a face, or something to do with the figure, I can pull that stuff out of what I learned from it back then, even if it's not the work that I'm doing now, just, retaining that information that I learned whenever I was focused on, like, okay, like, how does lighting work? How does it, like, make things shadowed in a certain way that looks dimensional, like, it's things that once you do it enough times, like, it's there, and,
Yeah.
back out, in the right moments. And yeah, like, I mean, sometimes it's almost kind of, it feels like second nature to just draw a face and I already know how I need to shade it without looking at like a heavy reference at that point. It's like, yeah, I know how this lighting scheme works. I know how the shadows need to lay. And yeah, I mean, maybe not everybody's looking for that type of, look in their tattoos. There's, I mean, tons of different styles you could go in. I tend to like to flirt in that like illustrative, not too realistic, but not too flat and simple either.
Yeah.
To some of like the black and gray stuff, especially that I tattoo. Yeah, I like a little bit of realistic quality to it, a little touch of that, but not too much. So yeah, that information from studying all the anatomy stuff at one time comes into play, really well there, and it helped me out a lot. So yeah, I don't regret taking some years and studying that at all.
Very cool. And it sounds like your first passion, though, what you initially wanted to do was the more graphic or illustration kind of stuff, and you fell into tattooing. So what, as a kid, particularly inspired maybe some of the stuff that you're doing more now with Creep, just fully realized?
Yeah, gosh, as a kid, I was real fortunate to grow up with parents that were a little more relaxed. They weren't too restrictive on things that we did or things that we watched. So I got to see a lot of movies that, maybe for some people that might be like, maybe that's a little too early to show a kid that. But
Yeah.
I was lucky to be able to grow up with horror movies and things like that. My dad, I wouldn't say he was a metalhead or anything like that, but I mean, I got to grow up on some good music as well. So yeah, I think early influences for me. I mean, if you want to go way, way back, like Disney animation and illustration, those early movies they put out that, a lot of kids.
Like Fantasia has some dark moments.
Yeah, exactly. Like stuff like that. I mean, it's pretty powerful stuff as a kid. So, I remember being young and and trying to, emulate some of those characters and things that I watched. But also, yeah, I mean, early stuff. I was born in 1990, so I mean, I couldn't go without mentioning, Tim Jacobus, the guy that illustrated all the Goosebumps.
I have a book, right? I was about to mention the same thing because we're
Yeah.
the same age roughly.
Yeah.
And that shit was so influential for me.
Oh,
Man. That's awesome.
like those covers just blew me away.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say I wasn't a strong reader when I was young. I just really was drawn to, images mostly. And, one thing those books didn't have was illustrations on the inside. So I would say that I probably bought them more because I love the covers than to actually read. I had a
Totally.
solid Goosebumps collection, but yeah, like to say that I read most of them is definitely not true. But I just love the way the covers looked, and they were cheap enough that every time we would go to Walmart, I was like, can I get another Goosebumps book? So, like, yeah, Tim's work was an early influence. Yeah, I mean, growing up, my dad worked with a couple people that, that played in a little like side project band and stuff like that. So I remember getting like some early tapes and things like that from them. And man, some of the artwork for the albums that, I would get as a little kid just really, stuck with me. I mean, I remember, well, I mean, to cite a few people, Pusshead and Repka and, all those guys, that were on some of those like thrash albums and things like that from that era. Yeah, I mean, like, just stuck with me hard. I mean, Richard Corbin's Bad Out of Hell. I mean, like, I don't even remember listening to, that album from Meat Loaf all that much, but just the cover alone, like, it just it's still probably one of my favorite like
So
albums.
iconic. Yeah.
It is. It's fucking badass, and it always will be. So I remember seeing that early on and was just like, man, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. So yeah. I mean, there were just a lot of things early on that really stuck with me like that as a kid, and getting a little older, finding like comic book work was one that once I got into. Like middle school and stuff like that became a big thing for me, late 90s and early 2s, like Spawn was one that I like all the time, like had to go every month and get my mom or somebody to drive me to the bookstore to pick up the next issue of Spawn, and and all the offshoots that they would do as well. So yeah, Todd McFarlane's work, or Greg Capullo,
Yeah.
I loved that work in the 90s. I mean, I would say that was probably like them, and stumbling on like Bernie Wrightson pretty early on was probably, I mean, huge in wanting to draw that type of work, and past that, I didn't really know a whole lot about that stuff, but those guys like specifically, like kept me really hungry to pursue that type of work. And then obviously like getting older and being able to, access the internet and, other sources and people that know about this stuff before I did, that helped a lot in finding the other influences that I have now. But yeah, those were probably the big ones starting off. I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I love to draw. If it had a skull or a skeleton or a monster or whatever in it, that was that was what I loved. So yeah.
It's funny how much overlap in your experiences to mine, like, because same exact thing with the Goosebumps covers.
Yeah.
Like, I have the same experience, and then my parents are big Meatloaf fans, so I had that album cover, and I thought it was gonna be the most badass shit ever. Put it on, and then it's like it takes some getting used to. I love it now because it's nostalgic, but yeah.
It's fun, but not what you'd expect at all whenever you see the cover. I mean, he had like, Bernie did a cover for him, on follow-up albums. I mean, there were some great artists that he got to do, his cover work. I mean, I feel like he was probably just as much as in love with that type of art as we probably were as well. But yeah, that Richard Corbin cover is just, I mean, it always stuck with me. I thought that was the coolest shit ever. And then like, some of the Frazetta covers that would show up on some of those old, rock albums and stuff like that. I mean, so many good ones, and like super thankful that even though the town I grew up in was really small, very, very Christian, very conservative, there weren't a whole lot of places that I could go really like see that, I feel enough to have had just, enough of that stuff around to really like, tip me off about that kind of art and really get me inspired to make that stuff, and turn it into like a lifelong thing,
Yeah, that's so awesome. So then what about your interest in metal music? Do you remember like the first band you heard that kind of got you? I imagine you're a metal fan, but like kind of got you into that.
Well, so let's see. I would say middle school was probably the turning point for me when it comes to metal. Like I said, growing up, my dad was probably a little bit more of a classic rock type guy. I mean, we always loved listening to like Van Halen, like AC/DC was my favorite band ever growing up. That was actually my first concert, and I found out that that night that me and Angus Young have the same birthday, March 31st. And I was like, even better. Like, that guy always made me want to play guitar as a kid, and I love the music that they did. And then come to find out we share a birthday, so like cool things like that. But yeah, around middle school, I would say it was probably like the turning point to when things started to go more from like classic rock to metal for me. Definitely like early Metallica albums, like could not put those down whenever I first found out about them. Slayer was the same way, like couldn't quit listening to that in middle school. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. There were like a few people that once we started going to high school, there were some gateway bands, things that you would, that were heavy, but, weren't hard to find still in like a closed off kind of concern.
like Best Buy or something.
Yeah. I mean, like let's see, let's think of some gateway bands. Well, I mean, Black Dahlia that I just got to draw something for. They were another band in early on in high school that I stumbled on. Yeah, like Hatebreed and Lamb of God and like things like that, like things that people play in the like the workout room and stuff like that, or like during like sports practice and stuff to get you pumped up. I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And then I do remember skateboarding, as well. That was also another outlet for some good music. I remember we used to listen to a lot of punk, and then one day one of the guys that I was skating with, he was like, dude, you got to hear this. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And it was like just old Cannibal Corpse stuff. And I was like,
oh, yeah.
Like also another like gateway game changer right there. As soon as I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to listen to right now. So, and it just went from there, like it never slowed down. That was like when, my parents started either being concerned or just like, they're like, what are you doing down there? What's going on in what's coming out of your closet? But yeah, those are probably the early ones that just really got me, hooked to the scene, and also like opened me up to a whole new list of people to look out for in terms of artists. I mean, high school, I feel like anytime I could get on a computer, I was probably trying to figure out what Mark Riddick or Putrid Matt were up to, whatever they were drawing. Like those guys like specifically were pretty big in my high school years for me. Just I don't know, it was like, I mean, and it shows, like I stick to pen and ink a lot now, and those guys that they were doing a lot of that, mostly just the black and white imagery, and it was just like so strong and nasty, and I was just like, yeah, this is the craziest stuff I've ever seen, like in terms of black and white illustration at the time. So yeah, that was all I wanted to draw in high school. And then from there, I was like, I wonder how I get into this, how does this become a career for somebody? And I just could never figure it out at the time. I went to community college for a hot sec to try to figure out some graphic design things. But yeah, just due to, I would say, lack of interest in what I enjoyed, as far as the teachers were concerned. And some other like personal stuff, like family was going through a big change with some divorce things. College was just a pretty much a loss, like I took a big L with that one. It was just like it's not going to work out. I dropped out. I didn't retain anything as far as like doing anything digital goes, and I still suck at it today. I'm trying to play a little bit of catch up with the iPad, but I really just like pen and paper, like it feels good to me. I work mostly with that. Sometimes I'll do a little bit of painting, but yeah, that was kind of how like getting into metal went for me. Middle school it started to change and get a little bit more aggressive, and then through high school even more so. And yeah, kind of led me into drawing what I like now.
Yeah, no, that's really cool to hear. And like I said, it's like I'm getting like nostalgic myself.
Yeah.
Like all these things are coming back to me. Albeit I was a terrible skateboarder. I landed an ollie once. I just hung out with that crowd.
Yeah. Skateboarding was very another like loose dream I had. I was like, oh man, like this would be fun to do all the time. Like as soon as we got. I remember one year in high school, it was just like all I could think about and all I wanted to do. And, I played sports all through, growing up. Like it was something that like my friends and family did. So, I have a history with that as well. But yeah, like once I found skateboarding, that was a whole new group of kids that I was just like really drawn to hanging out with. And yeah, there was one year where it just got so much that I was like, I quit all the sports that I was, in at the time. And I was like, I just want to skateboard. That's all I want to do. My parents got super mad at me for doing all that. And then, but yeah, I mean, it was short lived, but yeah, I really loved skateboarding. It was another cool thing to get out and do. And again, like, the artwork side of it, there's some companies that man, I would love to have some skateboard commissions That's
Totally.
had anybody, well, not never had anybody ask me about. There's like one company that right now is sort of in limbo. I'll check back with them every now and then just to see what they think about like this sketch I drew for a board design. But yeah, so far we haven't been communicating very much lately. But I would love to do some skateboard company stuff. Like, even though I don't touch that anymore, like there's just too much risk involved with it, with what I got going on. Like,
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
I don't need to break these hands. They're the money.
Yeah.
I don't need that kind of problem. But yeah, I would love to have a skateboard company ask me to do some stuff. Like Creature and all those brands that kind of lean towards the gnarlier side of deck designs. I would love stuff like that. But so far, nothing yet. But yeah, skateboarding was a big thing for me, and like I said, just like with music, it got me into certain things that I still love today, just by being around a crowd of kids that were different than what I was used to kind of growing up around, for the most part. And yeah, turned me on to also some other cool art that I just wasn't, in the know about, up until that point. So yeah, I would love to do something with that if possible.
That I think it would fit like perfectly. I could even see like your take on some of the more like iconic Santa Cruz images, but you do like your own twist. I think that looks sick.
Yeah, the Santa Cruz stuff, the Powell, like all of that. Yeah, those classic board companies, I feel like they kind of lean that way a little bit more. I mean, there's some brand, there's like, that's what I loved about skateboarding too, is that even if I don't draw a certain way, I can still really appreciate a lot of different styles of art, and skateboarding seemed to be one of those places that, I mean, you get a broad range of stuff. You could look at the Creature decks and see all the gross, kind of nasty things. And then, like there were other board companies that on the other end of the spectrum that, did some more like simplistic stuff or like a totally different, toned down style of art. But I just thought it was cool. It just seemed like a creative community altogether. And I think that's, a big deal for me, whether the art's the same as mine or not. Like, I just like being around like creative people, in general. Like, it just kind of adds to the fire. I love seeing what everybody's doing, and yeah, and checking in on people, and discovering new art and different styles to get me excited about it. Yeah, I don't know. Skateboarding was kind of like that for me too when it comes to the art you'd see out there.
Yeah, a sense of community is so important within any type of art form, and like you're saying, skateboarding is a community that has an art interest, but then it also kind of crosses over into sport. It's very multifaceted, which I think is a good observation.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and that's the like about what's been going on with the Creep page since I started it. I mean, it really kind of spawned out of a suggestion from a friend when I made it, because I'd only had the tattoo page up at that point, and I was working on some shirts for a friend of mine who does a lot of like serial killer, true crime, like merchandise, and he was like, hey, do you think you could help me design some shirts? And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's fine. Who do you want me to draw? What do you want me to do for it? And then so I remember posting a shirt design that I did for him on my tattoo page, and like almost immediately got really hateful messages about it, and I was just like, oh man, this kind of like sort of backfired. Like, I didn't do it necessarily for like shock value or anything. Like, legitimately just wanted to help a friend out. And I not to get into true crime or anything too much, but I love that stuff. Like, I think it's interesting to listen to, and I do a lot of podcasts while I'm drawing as well. So I didn't have a problem drawing something that, I mean, even before I came into existence, I mean, those people have always been around. Like, we've been studying them for a long time, like breaking down that psychology. So it really didn't seem to me at the time to really need to be too concerned about drawing that stuff, because it's out there anyway in like mini form. So, I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll help a friend out. Well, it kind of backfired on my tattoo page, and I got some people that were really, I get their points. They felt pretty, sensitive about the subject. And I was like, all right, well, I'll take it down. I'll figure out another way to maybe like display this in maybe like a better way. So that way it doesn't feel too triggering to somebody that might have an offense to something like that, because like regardless of what I like to draw, like I'm not here to like make people feel bad with the art that I do, like I didn't love, I felt off about something that I made. So I talked to him about it, and he's like, well, why don't you do like a separate page, that way like if you post art over there, people know that they're coming to see that kind of stuff specifically, rather than like, oh, here's a serial killer drawing right post of like a tattoo of a flower. I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. That my community there is probably way different than who I would try to market to with that kind of thing. So that's kind of where the split happened. And the Creep page started off as let's just do something fun. I'll post a drawing every now and then when I have the time to do it. And so I started off with a few like drawings, like some backlogged stuff that I'd done before the page. And then, just every now and then I'd post something, and then it just snowballed. And then, next thing I know, not even 2 years in, there's just this like killer community of people over there, and like,
yeah, it's bigger than your tattoo page in terms of likes.
It is.
Or followers, whatever.
Wild, right? Like I've had that tattoo page, and worked hard on it since, I started. So that thing's been, like I said, 12, almost 13 years strong right now. And then, yeah, in less than 2 years, I've like doubled that shit on my Creep page. And, but it's cool though, because that, like I said, even before tattooing, that was what I loved to do. And maybe that shines through a lot in that page, like it truly is a passion from like, the earliest memories I have of childhood up to now, like it still makes me feel like a happy, excited kid to draw this stuff, and just to, like I said, just kind of build a community with it, talk to like-minded people that love that kind of art, again, whether they do that style of art or not. Like it's just fun to see everybody's take on things and talk about art, and just get fired up for the next piece. I mean, just every time I post, I'm just like, man, this is like the best thing ever, like everybody's always like super nice and encouraging in the comment section, like people are super cool about reposts and stuff, and I'm just like, man, I didn't even plan for it to be this kind of thing, it just sort of happened out of out of chance, and I found a lot of people that seem to like what I do. So yeah, it's been a really cool experience so far with it.
Yeah. And it was kind of crazy, as it just seems like it came out of nowhere, which in some ways it did, but you don't see all those trials and tribulations of the past, know, your whole childhood and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of like your first, drawing on the Creep page is like fucking unreal. So it's like, shit, was he just born with this? And I knew, being an artist myself, like there's no way, but like, yeah, it's pretty cool how down to earth and low ego you are for kind of where you're at, in your career. It's have you kind of like been very conscious of that as you've been an artist? Like, I don't know how much you can speak to that, but it's just something that I'm feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've always grown up to be that way, like I can't think of a time in my life where I ever felt like I probably was full of myself in any sort of way, yeah. I just really loved the the idea of just getting better, and always like learning and being able to handle a critique or a suggestion or whatever, and just like applying that to the art that comes after that. And yeah, I don't know, I would say I'm very competitive with myself, like I've always wanted to make sure that I was always going forward and not backwards. So there's a big part of that I think goes into the art, and maybe the lack of ego. I mean, there's just so many people out there that like kill it, I mean, you can get on Instagram at any given moment and run across a handful of people that are just doing mind blowing stuff on there, so to be somebody that would, come out regardless of, how the followers have grown or the likes come in or the comments that are left, I'm just like, yeah, that's nice, and it's super appreciated. And again, it definitely pumps me up to keep rolling. But at the same time, I make sure that it never goes straight to my head. I'm just like, yeah, that's great, but I know that I have plenty of work still left to do and plenty of growth still left in me to make before I get to any place to feel maybe comfortable, and yeah, and there's been plenty of people that have said things along those lines that, like, the minute you start learning or stop learning is the minute, your art or whatever stops dying, like, I mean, and it's true, I think, like, I don't think I would ever want to just lean back and be like, yep, I've done it. I've reached the peak, and I'm the best that. But like, yeah, I love what I fucking do. I love drawing every day. It's almost all I think about.
Yep.
And yeah, I just love what it's brought to me so far. A lot of good friends and connections out of it, and I think. Yeah, being a cocky jackass, it probably wouldn't have went that way. I just like being, like you said, just a down to earth person that anybody could approach and talk to. Like, sometimes people will message me sometimes and they're like, I didn't even think you talk back to me, and I'm just like, oh man, I love talking to people, like I mean, half of it's my job is talking to people, like going and making connections with clients in the tattoo world. You have to be good at talking to people and networking, so yeah, I like to bring that to this page as well, despite what people might think, when they look at the art or, whatever, yeah, I'll talk to somebody that's been doing art for a long time. I'll talk to somebody that's like younger than me and just starting out and asking questions. Like, I just love it, like I'll talk to anybody. I don't care.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that obviously you're still wanting to learn and improve. Like, is there a particular set of skills that you're really trying to hone in on this year or really develop?
Well, I think I have a few commissions, still kind of lingering that'll require me to paint. I definitely want to get back into that at some point. It's one of those things where I love doing it. I love looking at paintings and, whether it be, paintings for a movie poster or just, in general, like for a gallery or whatever. I love paintings. I like sitting down and doing them. They're a little tougher for me to get started because it's one of those things where, supply wise and like space, it just has to be a little more specific than just grabbing a paper and some pens and just being able to sit anywhere in the house and do it,
Yeah.
Kind of have to be a little bit more closed off when I paint. So I don't dip into it as much. But I do want to get back into that. I think this year, we have a move coming up in the summer. So that's kind of been something that, like, as it gets closer to it, I'm just like, all right, I'll work on what I can, but I know at some point I'm going to have to pack up all this stuff and just, relocate. So yeah, right now I'm just trying to, stay committed to what I can with the pen and ink stuff, just keep improving with that. Yeah, technique wise, I've really enjoyed, getting into the cross hatching and stuff like that. Before I started the page, and even like up through the page, a little ways, I was a little more stipple heavy. I would do a lot more dot shading and stuff like that as a technique, and felt pretty comfortable with that where I was. And then I don't know, just kind of out of nowhere, I was like, I need to maybe like add in something, like some kind of thing, like maybe let's jump into something that I'm a little less comfortable with. And I think line and crosshatch was one of those things where, like, I'd done it before, and like little small things here and there, but it wasn't something that I was super familiar with, like doing stipple shading and stuff. And so I really just tried to force myself to to get good at it, to like do it over and over again, despite if I thought it was like a success or a failure. It's just like I want to get good at this. I want to figure out how this works, because a lot of the art that I liked, whether it be like illustration for music or comic books and stuff like that. I mean, crosshatch is a huge technique in that stuff, and I'd never really just studied it before. I mean, my favorite, or one of my favorite artists, Virgil Finlay, he's one that like people will cite to my work all the time, for good reason. I mean, he's definitely, I would say, besides Wrightson, he's like my top influence, as far as art goes. So yeah, I add a lot of techniques that I feel like he did in his work to mine. So yeah, it was just getting better at that stuff, trying to fine tune, the cross as much as I can in the art that I got going on now. And yeah, if I find the time, maybe after the move, getting back into some painting. Yeah, I would love to do more acrylic painting this year, I think. So yeah, it's on the list too. Just finding the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed that you do acrylic over oil. Have you painted in oil before? Or?
I have. I did like a little brief run of it years ago. I really liked it. It wasn't a medium that I stuck with for long enough to really, I guess, find a home with it. I had done a few things here and there, and acrylic was the first type of paint that I started out in. Whenever I started tattooing, I was like working on some paintings and had the downtime, and I think I just felt a little bit more comfortable with that, and I feel like I've managed to get a look out of it that maybe it's not exactly like oil, but
it looks a lot like it.
Yeah, I managed to figure out ways to make acrylic work for me in a way that it still feels pretty smooth and blended, which I think is a lot of things that like some people will, maybe fuss about when it comes to acrylic. It dries super fast. It's a little trickier to work with whenever it comes to like blending, because you don't have that that wet medium that you can just like work on it, come back to it the next day and still blend right into whatever you're working on. It's a little different, but once I kind of got a little more into doing this stuff, I wanted to try to bring it back a little bit, just in case, like a lot of album covers are paintings, whether they're on canvas or digital or whatever, like that look is very big in that, that type of music. So I was like, it'd be nice to maybe have some skill sets to offer there if people wanted to go that route versus the black and white illustration stuff. But it seems like for the most part, that's what people have been asking for, is the pen and ink. So I've really, locked in on that almost, almost completely. But I do have a cover. One of the bands you mentioned earlier when we got on, Duskwalker, I did a really fun painting for them that I'm super stoked about showing people whenever the time comes. It's very 80s horror, vibe. The color scheme's really fun. And, just the imagery itself, it was a lot of fun to put together. And that was one that I've had done since last year. And I think they're still working on recording right now. So it's still a little quiet, but me a mock-up with the logo for the band, and then the the title for the album underneath on the painting. And I was like, man, I can't wait for people to see that one, because again, like I post so much black and white stuff. I think having that, in there every once in a while is just like, oh shit, look at that. Like, wasn't expecting it. That's cool too. So, and so yeah, the acrylic stuff, it's not done as often, but I do enjoy getting to do it from time to time. So yeah, hopefully I'll find some more time to get back into it, just to make sure those skills are, pretty sharp. So
yeah, it's a really good point. And I want to talk a little bit about tattooing too, in the sense of like shop culture and stuff. I was just kind of curious, like from your perspective, what makes one tattoo shop's culture, like a workplace culture, maybe better than another? Kind of what's the good characteristics of a good shop culture?
Oh, sure. So the studio that I'm in now, it's in transition right now, but at least up since 2018, I've owned it.
Talon, right?
Yeah, Talon. And I'm transferring that over to a lady that works with me. She's been with me not not since the beginning of that, but she came along in like the second year that I was open. So, and we had worked together previously at another shop as well, which is how we knew each other and kind of came to the same space again. But yeah, I mean, as far as like tattoo shops go, I've been lucky enough to have visited some great ones, and even like myself, I've worked in some situations where I really loved the shop. At least, for the moment, I really enjoyed it. And I've been in ones that are pretty stuffy. Like maybe a whole lot of whether it be ego kind of getting in the way of people being polite and kind of receptive of a guest coming in or whatever. Like I've seen both sides of it, and I think that between that and also like working under some people that kind of showed me maybe like what a negative business owner attitude would be, versus a good one. Like I really tried to take all of that into this shop, whenever I first opened it up. So I mean, like our space in general, we've been a small group at times, we've been a big shop at times, but the whole time I've tried to maintain a space where people can really come and feel, inclusive and, like safe to be in there. I didn't want to have any place that, it only seemed to be geared towards a certain select type of person, like
Yeah.
I love the idea that, any, person with a like a normal career, desk job, whatever, like not heavily tattooed, like no piercings at all. I like that those folks can come in and feel like they're also a part of a shop, as well as people that might look a little bit more like myself, where they may have heavily tattooed bodies and a lot of piercings, maybe a more alternative look, or metal look or whatever. Yeah, we just wanted to make sure that everybody felt cool about coming into that place, and I think that that's gone super well so far. I've had the shop open for 5 years now, and it seems like it's gotten to um, grow and thrive really well in the city that I live in. And yeah, I mean, I've just been lucky to have like-minded people work with me so far, whether they're still there or not. That feel the same way. Like we don't want to exclude anybody for any other reason. Whether it be how they look or how they identify these days. Like that stuff's important. People shouldn't feel like they aren't allowed to come into somewhere, because they are who they are. So I think a successful shop to me, is one that, despite whatever you look like or whatever you're into, as far as you personally, you're able to accept anybody that can come through that door, and allow them to have the same service and treatment that you would anybody else, whether it be a friend or somebody that's more like-minded in terms of their interests or music or whatever. I mean, we were joking about it the other day, how Mallory, the lady that's taken over the shop when I leave, she likes to wear a lot of clothing that is a little bit more satanic imagery heavy and stuff like that, but has like a handful of clients that are very religious, that still like to come and get tattooed by her and don't seem to have a problem with it. It's just kind of a funny thing that happens sometimes. And yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Like I typically go into work either in like a metal shirt or a horror movie shirt, but I mean, I probably tattoo more people that don't like that stuff than do, and that's okay.
Right.
It's just, I think, yeah, you just kind of come to find, the longer you do stuff like that, the more accepting and, the more you let in, people of all types. I just think it makes the experience as a whole better. You never know what somebody's going to bring to your life and your situation, especially if you're closed off to it all. And yeah, I just like having everybody that wants to come in, and leave and have a good experience and a good tattoo. So, yeah.
No, nice. As far as influence and inspiration for tattoo work, do you have any people kind of like you? So you mentioned Bernie Wrightson, right, for illustration, and Virgil Finlay. Do you have like people who inspire you for tattoos currently that are doing work right now?
Yeah, tattoos. It's almost kind of like the illustration stuff, and that I find a lot of times I'll get on there and check my Instagram over there and just kind of go looking around for a little while. I mean, you run across so many people that are so good at tattooing, all over the world. It's like super hard to cite maybe a few people very specifically, because again, it's just like, I mean, there's such a broad range of styles out there that are very attractive to me. And I mean, some of the bigger influences that I have, I feel lucky enough to be able to call them friends as well. I would say some of my favorite people that I look up to in tattooing, I've gotten to meet and keep a pretty close communication and friendship relationship with. And I try my best to meet those folks. It doesn't always work out. We're all very busy. So sometimes it's a little harder to get together, as much as we'd like, but we usually try to meet up at conventions and things like that. But, or I'll try to travel when I have the time to, different shops and see my friends and stuff like that. But I would say some of my favorite people are probably my friends in tattoos. And, outside of that, there's definitely some, bigger influences, guys that have been doing it longer than I have that I've gotten to meet before. I mean, I've actually had a pretty cool thing going on here in the last couple of years. I've one guy that is currently tattooing that I like a lot. His name's Johan Svan. He's a Swedish tattooer, and I liked his work a lot for several years. And, he always seemed kind of out of touch, like his following was like super big, still is. Like all his work was like, just fucking dynamite. And I was like, man, that'd be cool to, like run into him or get tattooed or whatever. And then so back in 2019, he had posted about wanting to take on some big projects. So, I thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, maybe I should just go to Sweden, like maybe I should just get tattooed by him, and just make the connection that way. And so like for the last few years, I've been going and getting my leg sleeve worked on. So it's like from hip to ankle on my left leg. I've been traveling back and forth to Sweden and Denmark with the family. Awesome. I'll get tattooed a few days in a row out there just to, try to knock a good chunk out. But yeah, I mean, stuff like that. That's what's cool about tattooing. It's just like, the illustration page. I mean, you connect with people from all over the place, like you never know what's going to happen with it. And that's the fun part about it. But yeah. I mean, like I said, he was a pretty big influence, that I had never met before up until, 2020 was the first year I got tattooed by him. And, since then, he's just like another one of those guys where it's like you bump into somebody who you think like has every reason to have a big ego, but they're really nice and down to earth, at the same time. Like he's a big family man. He never made it seem like my wife and daughter couldn't hang out at the shop if they wanted to, which isn't always the case in a lot of shops. Most shops don't want kids in it, or, don't like when people come in and, have extra people hanging with you while you get tattooed. But yeah, he's like, they can stay here if they want to, like his kid would show up, and, his wife would be there as well. And yeah, it's just one of those experiences where, it's like, cool. Like these people are just like me, like they just love what they do. They work super hard at it. They have a family and a normal life. They're not just some like, big headed, like way up here that you'll never be able to connect with, like it's cool. Mm-hmm. That happens. And it's happened a lot more than it hasn't, with tattooing, which is nice,
Very good to hear.
It's like Instagram's super weird, like I feel like it has a tendency to, make people think certain things, whether it be about their own popularity or self-image, or, or like from a viewer looking, you might think the same thing that I was saying, somebody might be like too big to actually get to talk to, And yeah, I mean, with tattoos, it seems to be more often than not, like you'll meet these folks and they're just the same way I am, just happy to connect and talk, and talk about what we enjoy, with tattoos and art, or all the side stuff, music, whatever. Yeah, and I've been lucky enough to build some good friendships out of stuff like that. So.
That's awesome to hear. That's more often a really good experience than a bad one. In terms of, you have your daughter, your wife. It seems like you've been with her for a long time. Kind of like, what are some of the aspects of being a family man that you enjoy the most?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So my wife and I, yeah, we were high school sweethearts. So yeah, we've been together for 17 years now, which is nuts to think that we've spent half our lives together. But yeah, we definitely have. Yeah, we got a super good relationship. She's very supportive of everything that I do as far as my art endeavors go. She's always been right there behind me. Every step of the way. Like whenever I learned to tattoo, I had to go through an apprenticeship for a little while, and that's an unpaid thing. That's that's a thing you put a lot of time and energy into, and you only get out the experience and the knowledge. You're not going to get compensated monetarily for it. So yeah, there was a time period, where we were like young and houses and stuff like that she, really buckled down and like worked to help cover most of the bills just so I could learn to tattoo. And, that's stuff that I could never, be thankful enough for, and like, I don't even know how I'd repay somebody back for something like that. Cause like, now that I'm in it, like, I mean, it's totally changed everything about my life, I mean, we travel a lot, we've got friends that we would have never met otherwise, like, I mean, the opportunity to move to a different state and still do this kind of job and make new friends and connections, or, or even just the opportunity to do this illustration page, like I got to do that because tattooing was so successful. I could, take a risk and be like, all right, let's see how this goes, like maybe I'll take some time off of tattooing to do this because I know that I always have the work there with, tattooing, that if I needed more, financial support or whatever at times, I could always go back and just do more, but yeah, like I have all that because she stuck with me through those, early years of being like broke and trying to just, dig in and make it. So yeah, I love my wife for that. She's always been, right there with me, being supportive, and yeah, like having a daughter now, we had our daughter about 3 years into me tattooing. So, a happy accident, wasn't planned, but, we both were like, oh man, like we gotta buckle down. We gotta make this work, like that's a huge life change, like coming down the pipe, fast. So yeah, like ever since then, it's just been trying to do this juggle and balancing act of, how much do I give to one thing versus the other, and like I said, luckily, my wife was there before any of this ever happened. She's been there the whole time it's been growing. So she totally understands the sacrifice that comes with, just having to constantly work and get better and improve on something, like there's a lot of times where I'm stuck at the table drawing, and, she might be in a different room or wanting to do something else with her time versus me, sticking with me and working. But we've never seemed to let it get to a point to where it seems, like it's affecting the relationship, and we're very good communicators with each other. So if something were to be, going wrong in that, in that aspect, if I was working too much and, she was feeling a little left out or whatever, like we're really good about talking to each other about that kind of thing. We've been very lucky that, we've, have a strong connection, don't really fight or anything like that, like we really work well together. And, same thing with being parents, like super happy that my daughter loves art. So that means, if I'm doing it, she's not like, oh, dad, like, why are you hanging in here doing this and not with me or whatever, she'll come in there and draw. So, it really works out. But, yeah, I mean, and there's times where I know that I need to, whether there's work to be done or not, like, family's important, like they support me. I need to be there to support them and whatever they got going on. So yeah, I still try to make time, to be one-on-one with them. So like a good example is every Monday we have a very specific day and time blocked out to do anime. That's something that my daughter is very into. So yeah, we were like, all right, every Monday is anime night. We'll go get ramen and some boba tea and come back and we'll just watch anime until it's time to go to bed. So like doing little things like that, or if I have a work trip or something like that, or an opportunity comes up to travel, I try to take them with me, like even though it's more expensive and sometimes it'll stress the budget out, I'm like, hey, like I want this to be an experience for all of us to remember, not just me. So, like we try to stick tight and do all these things together, even if work's busy, so yeah, there's always that like small amount of guilt, where I'm like, am I drawing too much? Am I doing like too much here and not enough there? But they never give me any problem about it. They're always there to support, and I'm super thankful for that. And yeah, it's made the process of being a tattooer and a shop owner and now a busy illustrator, that much better and smoother, and a nicer experience all around. Like I don't have to sweat it too bad because they're right there with me, supporting it. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. Really good to hear. Last question on my end before we pull up some artwork and kind of dissect it a little bit. Do you currently collect anything? A lot of my friends online and people who subscribe to the channel, they collect vinyl or CDs. They're music collectors. Yeah. Do you do any of that, or collect books or movies?
Yeah, I'm definitely a big book buyer. I probably have more books than I'll ever be able to sit down and actually look through and read entirely. But yeah, it's just one of those things where if something pops up that I'm really interested in, I'm like, I should get it. You never know what'll pop up down the road. I might have some time to get into some of these books that I haven't really cracked open too much past the initial getting it in and unboxing it or whatever. But I also love collecting monster masks. That's another thing.
Nice.
So there was a brief period of time before tattooing happened and in between the dropping out of college thing where I was like, maybe I want to get into special effects. Maybe that would be something cool to get into. Like I said, I'd grown up on horror movies, anything from the 80s. I mean, it just all the gore and the practical effects that those guys would manage to make up. I mean, sometimes on super small budgets, the creativity and just the, all of that goes into it, super inspired by that stuff. And even still, in my drawings, that stuff shows up too. I feel like anytime I'm drawing something, whether it be a zombie or some kind of creature or whatever, some of that stuff is influenced by illustration work, but a lot of it is also influenced by special stuff too. So there's that as well. Even dip into it, but yeah. Let's see. Hold on, I'll raise the phone a little bit. So I'm setting.
Oh, nice.
A lot of them right here. So yeah. So there's a little row of heads back there, and then some up on the walls, and then yeah, there's a few more over here. Yeah, collecting masks was something that I got into here for the last few years, and yeah, I super big on that. Let's see. I would say
the books, are they mostly art books, or are they typical fiction or nonfiction books?
Yeah, almost always art books. I'm still kind of that same kid that doesn't read as much as he probably should. I just pictures. So yeah, yeah. Anytime I get a chance to get a book, it's usually probably an art book more so than anything. So yeah, that makes it a little easier for him to be able to be opened up and looked at. I have a few books that are more novel type stuff, and yeah, like I said, I'll try to get them every now and then and read, but I don't know. I stay so busy with art. It's hard to to separate some time for that kind of thing too.
Yeah.
You know, but I love getting books in, love getting masks in when I'm able to. DVDs, Blu-rays, like, big fan of just getting any type of movie that I can if I'm able to. We're starting to run out of room for that kind of thing. My vinyl collection it's growing, but it's definitely not huge, not anything impressive, but that was something that I was a little slow to at first, but once I started getting into it, it totally clicked with why people like to do it. Like it's its own thing, and I love things about that versus listening to something in like a digital format or whatever. Like there's a whole other thing with collecting vinyl that's fun about it. I mean, the artwork, that you get on, those things. I mean, it's blown up, so you get that like oversized artwork that you can look. I like the sound of vinyl, especially if you're getting like something used or a little old, that little crackle and stuff like that. It's little things that make it fun. I started collecting some like soundtracks too, like movie soundtracks. That was another one that even after I got into vinyl, I was still like on the fence about it. I was like, I don't know, like, do I want to listen to just like the sounds and noises of a movie rather than watch it? But as soon as I started collecting, I was like, oh my god, this is like watching a movie in my head while I listen to the vinyl, the soundtrack. So that became another thing that every time I'd go out and look for, records or something like that, I would always see if a place at least had like a little small soundtrack section just to see what was in there. So, So, there's, I think that's just part of who I am, like I wouldn't say I have like a huge collection of just like one single thing, it's just like I'll get into things and just want to collect a good chunk of this and a good chunk of that, and kind of bring it all together and just put it in a room and just have it all inspire me in its own way. So
I'm very similar in that way too.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Let me see if I can pull this art up. And the first one, I've got the close up there, and then the full image. Yeah.
This piece was I put a little bit about it in the little
description.
Yeah, the description. Thank you. On Instagram. Yeah, it was kind of a piece just sort of born out of the idea of crossing over some tattoo imagery with what I like to do on that page. I mean, I feel like both things are very much a part of like, who I am, on a daily basis. So I was like, you know what? Like, I don't do that thing very often, especially on this page. It always sort of leans a little bit more towards like horror or comics or metal. I was like, why not maybe like take a minute and try to merge like some tattooing with the horror illustration. So that was pretty much the main idea behind that one. Just take a pretty classic tattoo image and try to spin it in a way that would appeal to people on this side of Instagram. And I think it seemed to work out really well on both ends, really. I mean, I had a lot of people, both tattooer and non-tattooer, that were just like stoked about that piece. Like I still get people that'll like holler at me every now and then about just how much they like that piece, and I was like, oh, cool. Like it was just kind of fun little like, hey, I got some time in between some things, and it ended up being a bigger drawing than maybe I had initially thought of doing. But I just I think right before that one, I had worked on a little collaborative piece with a friend of mine that had come down to visit and tattoo with me the week or so before it. And, so I bought a big bristle pad. I think it was like 18 by 24 inches, and it was just sitting over there in the corner after that. And I was like, maybe I'll do the dragon on that thing, like that seems like a huge thing to take on right now. But, and usually that's how it goes. Like I'll sort of second guess some things whenever I first get into them. I'm like, is this too much to do right now? Like, do I really have the time for it? But I couldn't put it down as soon as I started. Just every time I could get a chance, I was like digging into that dragon and just trying to make it as cool as possible. And also it was kind of fun to do something on that scale, because most of the stuff that I post are probably 11 by 14, 11 by 17 ish. Sometimes they're a little smaller, like the 8 by 10 or 9 by 12, but those would probably be the more standard sizes that I work in terms of what I post on the page. And yeah, every now and then I'll just kind of get the itch to draw something big. And like you can see, by that one, there's just so much you can put into it. If you're into kind of tweaking out on the details and stuff like that. Like if adding all that stuff and really taking the time for it doesn't bother you, like that bigger scale is a lot of fun to work in. So yeah, that was that was a super fun thing to do. I hopefully will make some prints out of it this year, and it seems like people are pretty interested in it. So I'll see if I can get something physical for people to have with that one. That way, if they want to look at it up close and admire it that way, they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would be buying this print. This thing absolutely blew me away for like a number of reasons. The amount of like the value spectrum is pretty insane. Like, you got the highlights, but you have so many different layers of depth within it.
Yeah.
And then there's nice soft edges, next to the hard edges. I mean, I could kind of go on and on why I think this is so successful. So your process then, are you doing your initial sketch on the final piece, or do you like transfer using a light board after it's kind of rough and then you have a more rendered version?
Yeah. So I do everything through Lightboard. So that's something that came with me from tattoos.
Yeah.
That's how I always drew tattoo designs, tracing paper and a light board, just layering one on top of the other until I get to the final, from sketch to finish. And so I do the illustrations pretty much the same way. Like rarely will I touch the actual drawing, the pen and ink drawing with any kind of pencil beforehand. Sometimes I will. Like let's say, there's a space in there that maybe if I'm like this one's a good example. If there's like spots in there where I need to know where an edge is, but I'm not necessarily putting a hard line on it, like I just need it as like a placeholder, then I'll add in a pencil mark or something like that just to know where an edge needs to stop so I can kind of shade up to it, but not give it its own line. But yeah, so this one, as well as probably most of the things that I draw, starts out as a tracing paper drawing, and I usually only ever draw the lines for it, like the shapes of this thing that I'm drawing. I'll try not to put in any kind of like initial details or anything like that. Like for me, it's a lot of fun to just kind of see what happens in the moment, and so this in particular was a an in the moment kind of shading experience. Like I had the dragon roughed out as an outline on some tracing paper, and then I'll just light box it and just kind of work through it, like section by section, and just make those decisions as I get there. So sometimes it's a little, it can be a little risky, like it might be beneficial to have like a more like well thought out plan before I get into it. But I don't know. Sometimes I like to just surprise myself. I think they're a little funner to work through for me that way. When I have like an idea in my head where I'm like, all right, I can see it pretty well now. Let's see what happens when I put it to paper. It always changes, but it's just, I don't know. That's how I like to work a lot of the time. So yeah, most things start out as an outline sketch and that's it. And then I'll just fill in the rest of the information as I work through the drawing.
So are you doing like sheets on top of sheets to get the final form, or do you just do one typically in a race? Like, does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. I guess it depends on like how well the initial sketch is going. Most of the time I'll try to keep whatever I'm like shining through on the light box to the paper a pretty clean drawing. So I usually don't leave too much. Like by the end of the sketch, I won't leave a whole lot too sketchy or loose. Like I'll try to keep it pretty tight. all my art's pretty tight. That's been something I've gone back and forth with, over the years. And I think it just comes from tattooing as well. Like that job specifically, you have to stay pretty clean and tight on your details and stuff like that. Like it's, that was something that starting off, like right from the initial apprenticeship, it was like, all right, I was doing a lot of like pen and ink and a lot of like splattery, kind of like loose drawings at the time, and the guy teaching me was like, dude, I love all that stuff, but like now we got to focus on tattoo stuff. So you might need to like try to learn to draw a different way. And I was like, oh, that makes sense, I guess. So yeah, after doing that for so long now, it's like even my sketches are very tight. My drawings are really tight. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll figure out how to loosen up a little bit. But I mean, for now, it seems to be working. Everybody likes it, so it's cool. But yeah. Usually my layer process, I'll usually only have like one sketch layer, and I'll try to keep it pretty clean. Up to the final drawing. So.
Yeah. Well, I think the key thing too is your art has flow to it, yet it's tight. It marries both of those things very well. What about actual tools? Are you using microns a lot or brush pens? What's kind of your go-to?
Yeah, a pretty good mix of both, actually. Yeah, I feel like I'm always at the art store probably buying some microns or, some Faber-Castell or, let's see what I've been messing around with these little Statler, like pigment liners as well. I just kind of just pick up random stuff every now and then and just see if one feels better than the other, and I mean, sometimes it just sort of depends, like sometimes you'll get a handful of microns and most of them will be good, and then you'll have one that's a little but yeah, I'll use those. And yeah, there's a couple of different, I didn't bring them in here, but there's some brush pens and some other brands of like bigger, like fatter tipped markers that, like, for big areas of black or something like that, I'll use. Before I got into tattooing, I was really big into doing everything with like brushes and ink. But I haven't gone back to that as much. I think that the further I go into this, and the more my like style develops into kind of like what it is now, I've just got I've got a way down like a process where it's almost always just the pens. Is about all I use. And people ask the question about white a lot. That is like a nib and dip pen, and I'll just use white ink for like little like white dot details and things like that, and black sometimes to bring out a little bit more value in some of that. Yeah, that's a question I get a lot, and so yeah, so there's some white ink in there as well.
So white ink, not like a white paint pen or anything like that. You're doing. I've never seen that. Interesting.
Yeah, it's just a like I think the one that I have now is just like a little small jar of like a Winsor Newton, just like white pen ink, and yeah, I'll just use that and just dip a nib pen in it, and just I'll like stipple some white dots and things like that in there. One thing I like about doing that is it kind of it softens the edges of some things, a little bit. Like sometimes even if your line work is pretty tight up against, like a solid chunk of black, something about taking that white and just doing maybe like a few little extra dots inside of that black to kind of get rid of that harsh edge. Like, I don't know. For me, it's something that I like to do in my art. Maybe it's not like super necessary, or maybe to some people it might not make that much of a difference in the work that they do. But like for me, I love, having like a big chunk of black and knowing that maybe there's a few like textures or something like that I want to bring out of it. And then that's where I'll use the white ink, to like soften edges or like bring a little bit of value out of some of that black, and, just give it a few little layers of depth there.
Is any of that, so in the close-up we have on the right, in that black mouth section where it's one of the darkest values, do you have any of that white in there? Is that kind of what you're referring to, or?
Yeah, there's probably some in there, and I guess maybe the ways that I'll do it, it might be a little bit hard to kind of recognize what's what, because like once you get down to like the super tight like cross hatching and stuff like that, eventually it all looks like little white dots here and there.
Right.
But yeah, there's some spots in there like like right around like underneath the eye at the top. Um, yeah,
Okay.
you'll see like a little bit of like white stippling, away from some of the maybe like the brighter areas of where the light's hitting the skin. Yeah, a lot of that stuff is just like white ink and just using a nib pen to dot it. And yeah, I love doing that on like like I said, areas that are kind of meant to like roll around a form or something like that. It just adds a little bit extra to it that for me it was pretty pleasing to look at when I finally like discovered that technique. Before doing that, I would kind of I would almost sort of pre-plan where some of the white dots would be in the black and just sort of like draw them individually.
Yeah. Work around them.
Like blacking out an area and then going back over it with white. So it's made that whole thing a whole lot easier. But yeah, it seemed to help whenever I had maybe there was still a little bit too much of a harsh line between like where the black stopped and where I wanted like the mid tones to come out of that. It just kind of helps, like I said, soften the edge a little bit, give it a little bit more of a value range in there, rather than things being, just like light, medium, dark, like you can get a little bit extra in there with the white.
That's interesting. I'll have to look into that because I'll either do a combination of, like the jelly pen, white paint marker for if I want it pretty opaque, and then gouache. But
oh yeah,
it seems like a similar type of effect. But that's interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. So then we have the background for the stream here on the left, and then this other one on the right. Let's talk about the one on the left here first.
Cool. Yeah. So that one is that one's a close up actually of a larger piece I had done. That one was also kind of a fun sort of in between commission thing. Usually if I work on commissions and the deadlines aren't like too tight, I'll jump in and just try to do something that I've had in my head. And yeah, that one I went back and forth on for like quite a while before I did it. It was an idea that I was almost originally leaning more towards doing a painting of. But I kind of, I don't know, like I sat with it a little bit and I was like, well, maybe I could figure out a way to do this. Like, I think the biggest hang up for me on it before I started was like, how do I pull off like boiling liquid, in a, like with pen and ink and like the techniques that I used on like, previous artwork. So yeah, I was a little stumped at first, and then yeah, I just decided to just kind of go for it and see what happens. I'd never drawn anything quite like that, as far as like that like bubbly, fizzy, like boiling liquid look. And yeah, I spent a lot of time going back and forth and referencing like boiling, like pictures of boiling pots and stews and things like that, just to see what it to have something like meaty in like some boiling water. And yeah, and then again, just kind of like apply that to some human remains or something like that. Some skin kind of like melting off the bone and stuff. So yeah, and I figured I didn't know who would like it or if anybody would be interested in using it for like a shirt or an album cover, like if it worked for something like that. So it is even the original's in it like a square format in case that ever happened. But I'd even thought about maybe like bringing it in on like a t-shirt for myself or something like that. If I didn't end up knowing what else to do with it. But yeah, actually, let's see, I brought my portfolio in here, and that's one of the pieces that you were showing me before the interview started that you wanted to talk about that I actually still have. So I can flip through real quick.
I guess he's scale then too.
Let's see, let me drag it out of here. Yeah, if I remember right, it's I think it's 12 by 12 is what I drew it at. So about the size of like a record cover, like a vinyl cover size. But yeah, so that's like compared to me, that's how big the original is there. But yeah,
Yeah, you got that section in the bottom left I didn't see there. Oh yeah, and then the hand popping out.
yeah, the hand and then some just like some gut.
Ribs.
So yeah.
Is
Yeah.
this Bristol board, or I see you do clay board as well? I don't know the difference between the two surfaces.
Oh yeah. So yeah. A lot of the illustrations that I'll put are just Bristol paper, smooth Bristol. But yeah, every now and then I'll work on some clay board, and I actually have some sitting behind me somewhere. This is a really like small piece, but yeah. So the difference in them is so you can see like
Thickness.
bit of a thickness to it, like it's an actual like solid board, and then there's a little layer of, if I remember right, I think it's just like a really fine like pressed clay over top of it, and there's some tools that you can use to really, you could probably use anything to scratch in it if you wanted to, but I have a little tool like specifically for it that I'll use, and that's kind of a whole other thing when it comes to like illustrating some things. Like you can get some really cool like looks and techniques out of that are a little harder to do on just paper. Actually, there's one that you'll probably bring up a little later that's clayboard, and I can talk about that a little bit more as far as like the technique that went into that one versus like if I were to do it on paper. But yeah. Yeah, the one that we were just talking about, yeah, that's Bristol paper, just a smooth Bristol.
Very cool. As far as that white ink you're talking about in the dragon, in the hair there, those kind of spots, is that the ink, or did you just work around that?
Yeah, so the hair, let's see, I'm looking at the original. Yeah, the hair, all I did was just left the highlights in there when I was using the pen. That one has maybe a little less of the white than some of them will normally have, and I think it's mostly because there's not a huge amount of like just big black areas open in there. A lot of the white dotting that I used was like in the spots where you have kind of like the fizzy like foam.
Okay, I see that.
Of like dark liquid, I would put in some like white dotting and stuff in there again, just to kind of like give it a little bit more of like a gritty, like fizzy texture to the water, so that way it didn't seem like it was really smooth and clean, and yeah, I wanted it to look pretty gross. So there's some white stippling in the like darker areas of like the fizz and like some of the bubbles and stuff like that, but yeah, not as much on like the hair or even like the skull or hand or things like that.
Okay, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And then this one on the right, I pulled this one specifically because I know how challenging it is to get perspectives like this.
Yeah,
and a lot of your work, I mean, there's a lot of work that like you obviously like have great sense of perspective, but you're not always flexing that.
Yeah.
And this reminded me a little more of, kind of bringing back to early inspirations. Like something that made Tim Jacobus so good was he always wanted to use interesting, unique perspectives. So while the outcome doesn't look like Tim Jacobus, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah. So that one is a commission that I had from a tattooer, and he wanted me to kind of do kind of like a riff off of a cover from like an old horror comic. There's a Witch's Tales. So I just used the original. The perspective is pretty similar to what the original had going on in it, with that, that guy really low and the bell seeming pretty close to, the viewer. But yeah, I didn't mind to even like add a little extra layer on top of that, where like in the original, the bell is probably about the closest thing in that image that you get. And down in the corner, I tried to bump up some of the like beams and rats to make them seem like they were maybe just a hair closer than the bell was to like whoever was looking at this. So kind of give it maybe like 3 layers of like, distance in there, versus the 2 that the old one had. But yeah, essentially it was pretty similar to the original cover art. But yeah, you're right. The thing with perspective, I guess, and sometimes it depends on maybe what I'm drawing for. Not everything, I guess, especially like a t-shirt design or something like that, necessarily calls for a huge amount of, perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times, if it's something like that where maybe it's just like a head or something like that that can be cool up close, maybe it doesn't need that much perspective to really like pull it off. But yeah, this one, just because the original comic art had that like really cool like dynamic perspective of that, like you're way up here in the ceiling looking down. Yeah, I wanted to try to keep that as much as I could, just because I feel like that was one of the things that made that piece really successful, in my eyes. So yeah, I wanted to make sure mine had the same thing going on. But yeah, there's a few times where, I feel like I haven't touched perspective enough, and I'm like, all right, I need to do something with it, just to again try to learn it, get better at it. Maybe going back to an earlier question of something that I would like to try to, hone in on more, as this year goes on. Yeah, perspective is always one on the list where it's always like one that seems to want to fight more than some of the other ones,
Oh, yeah.
Gosh,
Way more mathematical.
yeah, it is, right? Yeah, trying to break things down into grids and stuff like that. I mean, it gets tricky sometimes, and you know, I I'm getting better at it as I work with it. It's something that like, because I've tattooed so much longer than I've tried to jump into this side of things, with the illustration, I almost never have to really use perspective in tattoo work. A lot of it is typically, a little bit more flatter. Sometimes, maybe there's a little bit of it, but nothing like too dramatic, really, which also could be a cool thing to actually add in tattoos, now that I think about it. But yeah, usually that type of artwork, it's a little flatter, a little more like, one dimensional or something like that. And yeah, now that I'm doing this illustration work on the side, I'm like, oh man, I haven't messed with perspective as much as I would like to. Like maybe, if I get the opportunity, like try to throw it in there every now and then and see, how it works, or maybe what I need to work on with it. So yeah, that's definitely one thing going on, or going further from here, that I'd love to get more comfortable with.
Oh, that's awesome. So do you recall like having some struggles with that piece more than others, or not really, because you had the strong reference?
Yeah, I think having the reference definitely helped, with that one. So it didn't seem to be too much of a struggle. Yeah, I think that one probably made it a little easier, having a pretty solid like base to work from. Yeah, like I said, I didn't change like too much about mine versus the original, other than like maybe little minor details like the way the head looks, or the guy holding the rope, he's a little different than the other one on the original, like little things like that I changed, but overall I tried to keep the same, perspective. So it wasn't super difficult to kind of work through that, on the sketch. But yeah, there's been some other ones in the past. I don't know if we'll talk about any of them, but yeah, there's been times where it's like, man, you'll just sit there and just struggle with it for a night, just like, why does this look weird,
Yeah.
something off, and just, yeah, that trial and error, that perspective, yeah, like you said, it's a lot like math. You just really have to sit down and work slow, and just like, grid it all out, like do the legwork beforehand, rather than just kind of like eyeball it and then have to go back and change it, as you work through it. So yeah.
Definitely. Awesome. All right. So then these two, because of the way the format is, everything is just slightly tinier than I want it to look on, because there's so much detail and stuff. But these in particular stood out to me for different reasons.
Yeah. Well, and then again, like dipping into the perspective thing, these two I would say are good examples of me having, the chance to try out some of that stuff that maybe I don't use it every time I draw. So yeah, the first one on the left there, that zombie one. So that one was not for anything in particular. It was just, not for anything in terms of like it's not going on like a shirt, or it wasn't for a commission. It was just more of a personal like fun thing I wanted to do, and it was for a movie called Zombie, or Zombie 2, depending on like which one you want to buy. But yeah, so it's it's a film by a guy, Fulci, who did a lot of like very cool like horror splatter films and things like that. And Zombie is one of my favorite ones that he did. And yeah, I just been watching it again recently whenever I did that piece, and I was like, all right, I want to like sit down and just do something fun with it, like figure out a thing for the movie, even though it's not going to anybody, specifically. I'd went back and forth on drawing the zombie that's usually on like a lot of the artwork and cover and stuff like that for it. Like I actually have the head back here behind me. He's kind of got the little sharp snaggle tooth and the wormy eye socket and stuff like that. And I was like, I think I'll draw him. And then just the longer I sat on it, I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll do something different since, a lot of people draw him. I was like, how could I change it up but still make it look, very much like it's for that movie. So yeah, there's a part in that movie, you may have seen it, but just in case anybody watching hasn't, there's a part in the movie where, a lot of the zombies are kind of coming out of their graves in like this little like burial site that the guys run up in the middle of the jungle. Yeah, so that was kind of what I wanted to capture a little bit on there, was that like initial, something kind of coming out of the ground, and then maybe, a few in the back that are already out and walking around. And yeah, see if I could get like a cool like depth, in it as well, that view where you're just like ground level to whatever is about to come out of the grave. And yeah, it was a fun one to work on. Like I said, there's like a few layers of things going on there when it comes to the perspective. And yeah, it was a fun little thing to try to figure out how to work out.
And both of these have really smart lighting decisions. So do you plan all that out beforehand, or is it a little bit intuitive? Like, I'm just wondering, like, when my process before I go to a final piece, if it's one that I'm going to like, take a little more seriously than a sketch, is I'll do like a quick either value study or color study, so I know roughly what to go with. Do you do something like that?
Yeah. Very, very little. Every now and then I may do it if it's something that maybe I feel like would benefit me before I get into it. Mm-hmm. With that first one, the zombie one, no, that one was kind of like, I felt like the hand, I wanted it to be, one, closer to the viewer, but also covered, in some like, hidden, like trees and like, palm leaves and stuff like that. Like the grave behind the hand, has got some like palm leaves kind of covering it as well. So it was like, yeah, I knew that by doing that, it would put the hand, up close, a little bit darker because there's no light hitting it. But it's also the closest thing to the viewer. So, it'll be the darkest thing. And then as things kind of step back, I tried to do, less, if any, solid black areas, and just, hatch until I felt like the value was like comfortable for where it sat in the scene, So like as things go back, I tried to lighten it up a little bit and a little bit more each time. And also kind of considering like maybe, the like the zombies behind that grave there, maybe they're out in the middle of like an opening, so there's, light kind of beaming down on them versus like the hand that's in the front where it's really dark and kind of like, concealed by some of those like palm leaves and stuff like that might be blocking the sunlight coming in. So yeah, like little things like that I'll have, kind of in my head. If I remember right, I think the trying to think of the sketch on that one. I didn't do a full study of like shading or anything on that one. I think there were a couple parts where I just wanted to make sure that if I went that dark in one spot and went light in another spot, that it did look the way that I wanted to do it before I got into the ink. So it wasn't a full like shaded sketch. There was like a couple of places here that I would mark something dark or something a little lighter just to make sure.
Right.
But mostly that one was just an outline, and then I would just kind of figure it out as I go. I think that's the one nice thing about doing like cross hatching or even stippling too. You know, if you kind of get into a spot where you might need to, you know, maybe like darken something up a little bit, you know, you can always add a little extra layer of, you know, hatch or some lines or something like that in there just to like, you know, darken it up a little bit, or go back over some of the lines that you've already laid down and thicken them up slightly here and there. You know, like I think like some wiggle room once you get pretty comfortable with it, and it doesn't make it as scary to go into something with a little, you know, a little less planning. Whenever you know that there are ways out, you know, if you get into a situation where you're like, maybe this is not dark enough, or it's like there's not enough separation from, you know, one thing to the other, you know, you can play around with it a little bit and bring that white, you know, that I was talking about back into it. You know, like if something's too dark next to one thing or the other, you know, like bring that white in and lift some of that black out of one thing, and, you know, make it a little, you know, less darker in value and give some separation. So yeah, that one was kind of how I worked through that one. And the Cthulhu one, that one is clayboard. So
okay,
that I knew you were going to ask about. So yeah, so this one has got it's a little bit more like singularly lined, not so much hatching in that one. That one I was kind of trying to do a little bit more of I'm sure you're probably familiar with like Bernie Wrightson's like Frankenstein type art and stuff like that. I tried that one a little bit more of that look, you know, with the single lines and like things being like very you know, heavy in like one direction or the other. You know, I feel like that's what was so cool about the art that he did for that that series of work. You know, like he was real smart about where he put his lines, like how thick or thin they were, and also like what direction they were going in to kind of give the piece like emotion. You know, so yeah, that one I tried really hard to kind of do that. You know, I tried to be real smart about what direction I laid the lines in. You know, like how thick or thin they were, you know, like how I wanted things lit versus, you know, like shadowed and stuff. And yeah, it was a super fun piece to work through. I had, yeah, the guy that got that off of me, he has bought a lot of artwork for me so far, and most of it had been on paper. And that one, I talked him into let me do the clayboard because I was like, I had this like strong, like, image in my head and the technique that I want to do with it, and I was like, I think it'd be perfect for it, and I feel like that one came together really well, you know, for the end result. Yeah, that clayboard like just, you know, allowed it to go to a place that would have been hard to match on paper, you know. Yeah, and same thing with the bringing the white into the black. So yeah, we can talk about like the technique on that a little bit. So in some of the areas like the wings or like the heavily shadowed like stomach on or the robe or the rocks and things like that, even in the water and sky too, a lot of that stuff might surprise some people that aren't super familiar with clayboard. A lot of that stuff is solid black when it first starts out, and then, you know, scratched away. So like, yeah, even some of the like dark parts or the like the mid-tone parts of the sky, you know, like I would just do a section of black and then just scratch away until it ended up a mid-tone, you know. And the water's the same way. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with clayboard that again is a little tricky when it comes to paper, because like the nib pins and the ink, you know, you can get like a pretty fine line, but unless somebody has something that I don't know about, I can't seem to get a line as small as I can on paper, like than I can on the clay board. Like that, I mean, you can get like a hair thin white line on that, and it's I don't know. I like that technique, whenever the piece calls for it. So sometimes if I think something will look better on clay board because I can use stuff like that, then I'll go that route. But yeah, I think that piece turned out as cool as it did because I got to use that board rather than paper. It still probably would have been fun on paper, but yeah, just what I was able to do with it with the clay board and the tools that I can use for that, I really like how that piece turned out.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. So I'm trying to fully understand, and I'll risk sounding stupid just for the sake of trying to understand. But like, so you just showed me the clay board, and default it's white, right? Or like off white. So then when you're in progress, are you just laying down black inks and then you're scratching away? So do you have like blocks that you're kind of chipping away at a time?
Yeah. So what I'll do is just to even get the drawing transferred over on it because it's too thick to shine through a light box. So that's
right. That's a good point.
So that was a different thing altogether for me. Started using I'll sketch out a tracing paper sketch and get everything sized, and laid out how I want it, and then I'll use a like just the little carbon like transfer paper. I'll put it underneath it and then just redraw it on top of the clay board. So having that drawing on there completely definitely helps whenever I'm like sectioning things out. Because if something's going to be scratched away and be more of a mid-tone, but I know it's also got to start out black and it might be next to something that's already solid black, it definitely helps to like have that sort of planned out ahead of time in my head and just section it off little by little. So there's like chunks of like that particular drawing that I'll stay in one section specifically and get it done to completion and then move on to another one, so that way I know how to work the next section compared to where I just left off from. Because if I black and then tried to map out all those like mid-tones and carve back into it, I don't even know if it would work that way or not. So somebody might could pull that off, but to me that seems like a huge headache. So knowing where some of those dark areas need to meet like some mid areas definitely helps a lot whenever you're working on clay board. And I'll just section it off a little bit at a time and just finalize things in that section and then move on to the next one.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So do you find, this is my last question on this one, do you find that ends up just being a little more unforgiving than your pen and ink, where you could just, like, you have a lot of techniques, it sounds like, to develop or actually kind of take back with the white ink there? For this, when you're scratching in, I mean.
So I guess it just depends on like how heavy you are like scratching into the board. There's a couple of tools that are that you can get along with the one that I use to scratch and carve into it. That actually I remember on one piece specifically, there was an earlier piece that I did on clay board when I wasn't super familiar with it, and it was a piece where I had a figure. He was like a big like warrior, kind of like Conan type style guy, and he was fighting some these little like
I saw that one with the shield, he's got the sword. I saw that one.
That one was on clay board as well. There's a part in there, actually his stomach, I think I redid maybe 2 times from the original that I had laid down on it, just to change like how it was like shaded a little bit. I wasn't super happy with it the first go, and I kept working at it. So there's actually a tool that you can use that is like a little eraser in a sense. Like it's not like eraser material. It's a little bit more like a scrubbing pad kind of feel to it, but it's like small like an eraser, and you can scrub away things and bring that white back to you. If you're like, if you carve into it a little bit, you don't love it, you can scrub it away a little bit and have a smooth layer to start over with. I've done that before. Or if I'm not carving too hard into it, some of those like hair thin like scratches aren't that deep into the board surface. So if I don't like it, or if it's a little too much, I'll just take a black marker or whatever I'm using and just black it out again, and then just re-scratch it. Sometimes you might run the risk of like, bumping into some of those other scratches underneath, and like it could give you a little bit of a wobble or something like that in your new line. But I feel like there are ways that you can kind of like work back into it if you're not super happy with the outcome. But yeah, in a way, I think it probably is a little less forgiving than the paper would be. In some ways, but yeah, it like anything, it's got its things that you just kind of have to sit down and get comfortable with, just like on paper. It's its own little thing, I think, versus drawing on Bristol, and yeah, I want to work more with that too, because I think it's fun, just to kind of switch things up a little bit and get to use a couple of different techniques on there that I can't really apply to like the Bristol paper as much. So
nice. So we got some band work here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Night Shift you were mentioning earlier. Yeah. So he linked me up with that project to do for the Black Dahlia murder, and that like that tour poster / shirt design, and so yeah. So that was that whole concept of what is drawn there was from the band. That was exactly what they were wanting to do with it, something along the lines of like the classic Universal monsters, kind of hovered around some sort of like big burning torch, or something like that. And yeah, I mean, even with that like kind of solid idea, they still left plenty of room for me to kind of go in and have some fun and make up some things as I go. So yeah, like, I had the idea of putting them kind of in a cemetery sort of situation, or, like the skulls and, rats and things like that. They weren't like super necessary details, but, things that, we had a little wiggle room with the initial idea that we could use for it. And, yeah, I'm super pumped about that one. Going back to our earlier conversation about, gateway bands into metal and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, Black Dahlia is an early one for me, like, when Miasma came out, I caught that one, and, it would just like, again, just like with some of those other bands, just opened up a whole new, like, area of metal that I just wasn't, in the know about at the time that I found it. And, yeah, to like fast forward, all these years later and actually get to, do something for them, especially on like a huge tour, them kind of returning from, losing Trevor, and and the bands that are on that tour as well are, some
Tears on it.
Yeah.
Frozen Soul.
Yeah, huge bands right now, like, people doing like killer work. So yeah, it was just, I don't know, I was like so stoked to get the opportunity to do something like that. It just another one of those cool things that just happens with doing this page sometimes. It's just like I might work with a little bit here in this comic section, of folks that like that type of artwork, or might do something for like horror movies and shirts, and then then all of a sudden you get to do something for like a band that you've been listening to for a long time. And yeah, it's just cool how that works out sometimes. And yeah, super pumped that I got to do that one. I'm gonna try my best to make that tour somewhere. I don't think they're touring anywhere like super close to North Carolina, so it'll probably require a little bit of travel, but I'm going to try my best to make it out to that show, just so that way I can, if there's a chance to say hey to some of them. But yeah, I just think it'd be cool to be able to see that, in life, since I got to do the poster for it.
Yeah, it's super cool. I love the lighting, very dramatic. And then I think the addition of those bats at the top, that graphic element is really choice as well.
Yeah, and it's something that I think it got changed on the final for the poster. But yeah, for my initial drawing, I was like, it was kind of one of those things where, like, yes, a bat would be dark, in real life next to some of that. But that's kind of the fun part about, do an illustration and having that room to play, like it's like, who cares if it's like completely like realistic or not, if you were thinking about it in like the sense of it being like a real life image, it's like I got the lighting the way I wanted to, that I feel like it was, realistic enough to where, that wasn't, there wasn't any question on like, how things were lit or, what was dark or this and that. But yeah, when the bats kind of got added in, I was like, yeah, that like, it'd be cool to throw some bats in there, but I'll just leave them blank so that way they kind of stand out on their own, but you still know what they are, like I don't think it messes anything up because they're not black as well. So
no, very cool. And then this one on the side is for Mortuous.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about this one.
Sure. Yeah, that's another clayboard piece as well. And that one was, I talked to the band a little bit about the initial idea. Actually, that one, okay, yeah. So if I remember right, we had talked in. They were still in some of the, I guess, still in the recording stages of the album. I don't think anything had been like super finalized yet whenever we had first gotten in touch with each other. And they wanted a shirt design, but they were like super open about what it was, like which song it went with. So I went through, I had a chance to like preview the album, entirely up front, and they sent me, all the tracks and all the lyrics with it as well, so I could listen, look through and see if anything like stuck out, as far as a particular song or image. And so I picked two of them and kind of pitched some ideas to them, and then they picked from one of the two ideas, and then we kind of from there sort of fine-tuned the image to what like they had in their head versus maybe what I was seeing whenever I heard the song. So yeah, it kind of made for an interesting outcome. I still think that one in particular is probably one of the more like different things that I've posted on the page, in terms of like imagery goes. Up to that point, I'd never even like considered drawing a forest fire or anything like that. I was like, man, I wonder how I'm going to pull this off. So, again, it was just a lot of research on, what that looks like in real life, but then also like leaving enough room open to kind of interpret it in my own way. And then, I was like, what if we, throw in these like corpse trees and things like that just to kind of play up, like the song and yeah. So it was another fun challenge of like, perspective and working with the, the clayboard and the, the techniques you can get out of that versus like on paper and like trying to do a successful image of something I'd never drawn before, which was a flaming forest, and doing it in a way that it made sense as soon as you looked at it. You're like, oh, cool, that's what it is. Like it's not a thing that necessarily needs, to be colored, oranges and yellows to kind of like get the point across that like, oh yeah, shit's on fire, so yeah, it was an interesting challenge, but yeah, I'd still love that drawing though. I think one of the clayboards that I still have that one. So yeah, that one was a fun piece to work through. They were a cool group of guys, start to finish. They were like very into all the ideas that I brought in, and it was fun to bounce ideas off of them as well. And they were cool enough to send me a shirt of it once it was printed. So yeah, it's cool.
Nice. Yeah, I saw the band and I saw this shirt design. I wish I bought it without the show, but I talked with them a little bit too. Super friendly guys. I think with this one, and you create it, so you might not agree, but I see some more of your tattoo work, some of the shape language of like Japanese tattoo work actually come in here a little bit. And then the diagonals with the flames offers a nice visual motion that, it's that perfect balance of like you're talking about the design versus reality. Definitely. This one really captures that.
Yeah. Something that like, I mean, it's hard to really, think about like, okay, like I'm never going to run up on this image in real life. So I got to figure out a smart way to, portray it, having never seen it before. And I mean, there's a lot of times we get into situations like that where it's just like, you got to use a lot of imagination and like, some good referencing, to some realistic situations and then just see what happens. But, Yeah. I mean, it was a fun piece to work through. Yeah, trying to utilize like again like the line directions and like strong angles and stuff like that of how things are leaning. I feel like it turned out really cool. It was a fun piece to try to figure out, considering I hadn't drawn anything like that before. Getting the request for it. So yeah, I'm definitely happy with how it turned out.
Sweet. And I think this is the last one.
Cool. So yeah, so that one, another commission to redo a comic cover. So you got the Wally Wood on the left there, for Weird Science, and then yeah, my interpretation on the right. Yeah, with a lot of these comic covers, I've gotten to do a good handful of them now, and I think there might even be one or two still left on the commission list to do when I'm able to get to it. They're a lot of fun. They're all images from artists that I admire anyway. So being able to, dive into something that I've, looked at and appreciated, and trying to figure out how to do my own take on it, like what do I change? What do I keep? Like how far do I push this and not that? It's always kind of a fun challenge, to get it to still feel, like a strong representation of the both the original but also myself at the same time. And this one actually has a slightly different like hatching technique that I don't always put on some of the other ones. There's a couple of sections in there that like the aliens up close and stuff like that. There's just a specific way that I hatched it that I was interested in trying out, and at that point I'd only tried it on a very small, like just for fun thing before that. So yeah, it was kind of interesting to like work through on a slightly different technique, but I like the way that it turned out on it though. And I might bring it back on some things in the future. But yeah, it was like a very specific, like 3-line hatch only, So it was like go, up, down, and then one diagonal cutting across it. And, I would hatch all that first, in a section, and then I would go back and just kind of gradually build up lines in certain spots to get, again, like different value, and make it look, like it had some form to it, even though, that hatching was very diagonal and flat, to start with. So yeah, it was a cool piece to work through, and I think that one was probably the most intensely detailed like redo of a comic cover that I have up to this point. So it took me a little while to get through that one versus the other ones, but yeah, I'm super happy with how it turned out, and I think that might have been the only one that wasn't a horror comic. Yeah, I think it was my only sci-fi cover comic that I got asked to do, so that was cool to switch it up a little bit and do something, outside of the neighborhood of zombies or something coming out of a grave. It was like, all right, cool, we got aliens and spaceships and like levers and buttons and tubes and all kinds of other things that again I don't draw a whole lot of, to figure out how to take it and do it into my style a little bit. So yeah, that piece was cool.
No, that's awesome. I have to pull it up close and take a look at what you're talking about with that hatching technique. So were those lines then made with maybe like a thicker pen, and then your gradual ones for the form was like more of a, like I got a 0.2 millimeter here. Is that kind of how you did that?
Yeah. So I would, depending on what section it was, I would take probably a smaller tipped pen and just do like an initial hatch, like get all my direction laid down with the lines, and then I would just kind of slowly go back and pick different sections where I would make the lines a little bolder here, versus there, to kind of make it look, like it had some shape to it. So yeah, it was pretty cool just to work it out. It definitely a lot slower than the way that I would usually hatch something, just because of all that going back and forth and like building up versus, the way that I usually do it. But I mean, it worked out really cool. Like I was super happy with how that turned out, in the final. And, like I said, it may be something that, if the look calls for it, I might bring it back into some other pieces and stuff too. It's kind of like what I like so much about like people like Virgil Finlay's work. He had so many different techniques to get a texture or a look across on something, like, I mean, it was just everything, like stippling, like little small circles or big circles or hatching or just singular lines and, different things like that. Like he really just like used all kinds of different techniques to get a look out of something. And, I would love to be a little bit more experimental like that as time goes on, like getting comfortable with one technique is awesome, but then, like there's all these other ways that you could make something look a certain way by doing a mark a different way or something, like I would love to get into that a little bit. On the thing that I'm working on currently, there's a little bit of experimenting with some hatching I'm doing so there's a mask that I'm doing, and it's a metal mask. And I still wanted to do hatching in it because I did hatching on most of the entire piece anyway. But yeah, instead of like doing more like straighter like line marks with the hatching, I'm trying to like really curve each section and just do like different directions of curves and stuff like that, and just see how that turns out versus something that's a little bit more like straight lined hatching. And yeah, I really like how it's going so far. Hopefully people will dig it whenever I get it done. But yeah, just experimenting a little bit more with like different technique styles just to see what it brings to the work,
I just realized that my dog I found some cat vomit. He's just about to start eating it. So I got to keep an eye on that. I don't know if you heard, there's like, I have a French bulldog and he's probably grumbling right at the end because he's ready to go out, but he's fine.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, we got two cats and a dog here, and our dog, we have, hardwood floor in our house, so anytime she comes into her room, you can just hear those nails it just sounds like high heels just walking the whole time. And
yeah.
Come in here and start bugging me while I'm eating, but, yeah.
All right, man. I have one last question, and then we can start wrapping up unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about. But I've asked this every time, and I've gotten good, different answers. But what would be like one piece of advice you'd give someone who wants to create art in the metal scene, or really even just wants to create art for a living?
Yeah. So I love getting asked that question. It shows up a lot in my DMs sometimes. And I think the biggest advice I could give anybody seemed to work the best for me was to just make sure no matter what, you just stick to who you are and draw what you love. Like I feel like there's a lot of ways that people could, as an artist, if they have the skill, they could certainly dip into areas where maybe they're paying the bills, but they don't feel super fulfilled in what they're doing. Like I actually just talked to somebody else about that the other day. They do graphic design, but they're like, yeah, it pays the bills, but I don't love it. I wish I could make money off of my personal art. Like sometimes that's the case for us, but like no matter where you are with that, or if you're just starting out, I think sticking true to who you are and what you love is the best thing that you could do. I think that's why this page ended up being as successful as it was so quickly for me, was because I'm just drawing what I love to do. Like every time I get to draw something, it's something I'm passionate about. I love putting time into it. I enjoy the process of the start to finish with it. The getting to share it part, and the people that come, and comment about it or want to talk about it, whether it's just to say they love it or how do you do a certain technique on that or whatever, like I think it all just comes back to doing what you love, like just making sure you're spending the time that you have on shit you like doing, and that's easier said than done. Sometimes we got to pay bills. Sometimes we got to make sacrifices and do things we don't enjoy. But yeah, I think if you can give more time, to things that you love doing, I think there's always going to be a better outcome with it. Like people are going to feel that connection to it. They're going to see the love that you put into it rather than if it was just something you went through the motions with, So yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing for me so far, is just, whether it's for myself or somebody else, I just want to make sure whatever I'm drawing, I love it, and so far so good. I have no complaints on this page at all. Like it's been super fun and very rewarding to do since I started it, and it gets better all the time. I keep meeting people and making connections, getting to do stuff like this. And, I've been fortunate enough to do some other interviews with some folks as well that, it's just, I think, it all comes back to just, I post what I love, I wake up every day and I get to draw things that I'm into, and have been into since I was a little kid. And I mean, you can't beat that, right? So.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's the dream.
Yeah.
So thank you once again for anybody watching. It sounds like he's open to doing some more band commissions. I know some bands watch this channel, so hopefully we can, throw some projects his way if he's able to take them on. But it sounds like that's what you're looking for, right?
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. I do a bunch of different things. So like, really, if there's anybody out there that seems like my style would fit what they're going for, whether it's band stuff, skateboarding, like shirt stuff. I mean, it doesn't even have to be metal necessarily, if my imagery that I put out fits your aesthetic, I'm definitely here to talk and collaborate, I think that, again, that's another part that I love about this, this gig is just getting to meet, whoever and make those connections, whether it be here or there. But more band stuff would be awesome. I think there's a couple on the list right now that are, coming up. Hopefully everything lands, as time goes on for them, and I get to actually do them. But there's a few bands I think I got on my list, but always room for more.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. You can find him at The Creep from 6 Feet Deep on Instagram. He's posting stuff all the time. And thanks again, Tyler. Just stay on for 1 second once we stop recording. But I'll keep the series going, and we got a couple more artists in the pipeline. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you.